Good morning. It feels like we need to talk to you about Facebook, given how they've dominated the news for the last week. Please forgive the surrounding you're looking at. I'm actually at home this morning preparing for a BBC interview. I literally go from here, and in a few hours I'm going to be on BBC News and BBC World News helping the broadcaster and its viewers understand what's been going on with Facebook and discussing Mark Zuckerberg's overnight statement. So to bring you all up to speed, because some of you may know he issued a statement and did a video last night, some might not. He's come out, he's apologised briefly, he's accepted that Facebook made some errors. The alarming thing is that the errors date back several years. They had apps on the system which were wrongly accessing data and friends' data, and that data was being harvested. Facebook say they contacted everyone, and particularly the developers and owners of the apps, to say, you've extracted this data wrongly, you need to delete it. Facebook say they received the instructions confirming that data had been deleted. Yet they've appointed forensic scientists to actually go and see if that's the case. The problem, though, as I see it, is two and a half years ago, data was being harvested from apps that we had on our Facebook page. Facebook knew this, and they didn't come out and they didn't make us aware of it. And they certainly didn't tell us any of the changes that they made to the system to lock data and privacy down. Mark Zuckerberg says some significant changes were made around 2014. Then a couple of years ago, more changes were made. And then as recently as the last couple of days, further changes have been made to make sure this scenario doesn't happen again. However, he does stop short and says there's still work to be done over the next couple of days. And I guess this is where my issues with Facebook's conduct beyond the data breach comes into play. I should say there are obviously two parts to this story. One is the data breach, and then the second part is the alleged malicious use of that data by the consultancy Cambridge Analytica. Must say that there's, beyond the quite sensational news piece by Channel 4 that you may have seen, looks quite condemning the footage, but as we stand today, beyond the CEO being suspended, charges haven't been brought, an investigation is still ongoing. So we don't know definitively whether Cambridge Analytica have done something wrong or they haven't, but when you look at the video that was broadcast by Channel 4's reporters, it looks quite compelling. So we got the data breach, and then we got the malicious use. I don't want to talk any more about the malicious use because the process is still ongoing. I want to talk about the data. 2 years ago, when Facebook knew about the extent of the issue, why didn't they come out and apologise? Why didn't they tell us the changes they've made? Why didn't they help us understand what we could do better? 6 days ago, when the news broke, why didn't they come out and address users? Reports suggesting 50 million pieces of data, or 50 million users affected, I should say, understandably scared users globally. Was I caught up in it? Do I need to change settings? Should I even consider deleting my Facebook account? All questions you would be forgiven for thinking. Facebook could have come out sooner to help quell fears, but they didn't, and I don't understand that. The apology that was issued last night, if I'm being really blunt, and I must say, those of you that have watched our videos over the past few years, you'll know I'm a real advocate of Facebook. I like nothing more than sort of being able to laud the successes and the advancements they've made, but unfortunately the conduct in the last week, I just can't do that. I have to call them out on a number of fronts. Their action was too slow. Their apology last night was too weak. It felt like it was just addressed at media and politicians, and then it wasn't addressed at users. And it wasn't aimed to make you all realise what's happened, what's changed, and what they're going to be doing. The statement on his Facebook page, which many of you won't have seen, goes into a bit more detail about some navigation changes and some settings changes they're making. But it would have been far more compelling if that was shot in a video and issued on a mass media platform so you could all see it. One of the changes that Facebook have made, just to bring you up to speed, you've always been able to switch off apps and control data and privacy within settings. They're going to move the button, or going to add a button, I should say, to the home page so you can quickly toggle things so it becomes more prominent. So that's a good thing, I guess. It's just a shame it took this data issue to trigger that. In the interview with CNN, it feels like he's blaming the developers. And don't get me wrong, there's a malicious individual here, but Facebook for many, many years have had a policy about having developers work across their platform, developing, innovating and ideating on how the platform can evolve. If you're going to be a business that empowers developers to have open source access and do things with your platform, when things go wrong, you've absolutely got to be culpable from a governance perspective. And whilst we know the Facebook owner isn't brilliant at contrition, this was the time to be contrite, and this was the time to address the apologies and address what they were doing with the developers, rather than trying to shift blame. Yes, they've had malicious people, but there's a governance and there's a managerial element to this. And then the other thing I wanted to pick up was the timeline for absolute resolution. He says that the biggest changes have already happened in the last couple of days, so we should feel safer or encouraged. But given how Facebook have deceived us all for the better part of 2.5 years, I can't imagine users are going to buy into that too quickly. He goes on to say there's work to be done over the coming days, but he's not definitive about when it'll be fixed and when further announcements can be made. So I think you're right to be concerned about your data. I think you're right to want to understand how you can control the access to your data. But I think one of the things that we can draw from the statement is that the ability to maliciously hack data, that's been clamped down. And they say that they've now got controls in place that if there's an irregular data movements on the platform, they can see it and they can act on it. So 6 days in the making, pretty underwhelming, but you can be a little more confident that your data is going to be looked after. However, you would be forgiven for saying, well, what else aren't they telling us? And that's the problem with the deception, isn't it? And that's the problem with the lack of information. And that's the problem with the lack of openness. Are there other problems we don't know about? Are there other data breaches we're yet to be apprised of? And again, you would be absolutely forgiven for thinking those thoughts. The one thing I should say is that Mark has openly said that he will go in front of the Senate in America and MPs in the UK. So given the fact that he's made that commitment and they're bringing in forensic scientists to actually look at the data, that would suggest that they're confident that there aren't other exposés coming. I hope that helps. There'll be more information coming out from the immediate future team over the coming weeks as we rationalise all this information, particularly for our clients, how we respond to this. Do we continue using apps, sweepstake apps, for example, or do we have to have a change in thought? The teams will be in contact with our clients, and when appropriate, we'll make some further announcements publicly. Thanks for watching.